Hi guys, and welcome to episode number 38. Getting through these now. So I'm here with Mr. James Sharby. How are you today, mate?
I'm doing well, mate. Yeah, I was just complimenting you on your coffee, wasn't I?
Lidl coffee.
Well, it's not actually though. Well, it's from Lidl.
Well, it's from Lidl, isn't it?
From Lidl, but it's not the actual one, is it?
It's like, yeah.
You almost knocked me off, didn't you?
It's like Tesco's chocolate. yeah, but it says Cadbury's on it, mate. It's like, yeah, but I got it from Tesco's.
You bought it in Lidl.
I bought it in Lidl. Went for a trip to Lidl yesterday.
I can't believe it.
What, fucking hell. Come back, and you think, you get to the till, and you start adding it up in your mind compared to where you normally shop, and it was a lot cheaper, mate. And they taste, I know you're sceptically looking at me like, don't believe me.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff tastes just as good. You don't fucking believe me, do you?
No,
it's true.
Don't.
Like I said, well, trainer, obviously said that it's the same level as M&S. That's a bit strong. It's probably a bit too far.
No, it's too
far. Because M&S food is a personal favourite of mine. But no, yeah, it's Lidl. What as you said, I think it is Lidl coffee.
So people stand by because the coffee's going down really well today.
Yeah, it can be buzzing.
That is absolutely. I've seen nice and coffee before, so yeah, I'm good, mate, and I'm extra good after having a cup of your very nice coffee.
If you're watching this on YouTube,
which
we can now say,
we'll see that
you can see we've got a lot of coffee to go.
Gets us going, gets the brain working a bit, doesn't it?
Let's get the brain working.
I need it, mate. My brain's a bit slow about caffeine these days.
I thought you were going to say today. I wasn't checking if you're alright.
No, I'm good, mate.
Right.
Just if I need it now. You alright, James? What's going on with you, mate? I'll be honest with you, mate. It's a bit rough at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm good. How are you, Daniel?
I'm good. I was down at went to a school this morning because I'm
Careful.
where
Careful you take that.
one of my clients is a governor there,
Right.
and they're running a business mentor program with sixth formers, and so they're asking for like local business owners. So they asked me to go down, and I've worked with probably four lads. They train me because their parents train with me, and then the parents over the ESL can train them. And actually, I found it. And the parents have fed back, and it's been a positive experience for them because you're not family, you're not a teacher, you're training them. You can have a bit of a laugh together, and sometimes that leads to them opening up a little bit more, and someone slightly separate to their circle, and they're interested. And a lot of people are interested in business and things like that. And this program's set up for people that pretty much specifically are studying business. And you go down and you don't give much time, maybe once a half term, I think. And it's just someone from the outside to sit down. You get a mentee who you talk to, but it's really just to give them your view, not your view of the world. You're not trying to do that, but you're trying to speak to them from a position of not an authority figure at all. It's just having a chat with someone who's a bit older and got a bit more experience in life, and specifically in business in this case. So I went down for a little cheeky breakfast this morning. I'm always open for a free breakfast. If anyone wants to invite me to any, I will come for a free breakfast and a free coffee. Breakfast is actually my favourite meal to have out. This is
it?
Yeah. I love a nice breakfast out. We've got on a field here. So that's where I was this morning. So that's going to be, I think, quite enjoyable. And they're working obviously towards, like I said, a business study. So I was there and client in here, mate. Feeling pretty good.
Good.
Yeah.
Happy days. We're all ready to rock and roll, aren't we, today?
Ready to rock and roll. Got last football before the World Cup. Fucking Gareth Southgate's naming his squad in an hour.
There we go. If you
will he fuck it up? Probably.
Yeah. If you like football.
Which
most people do, don't they?
Yeah.
Everyone does, doesn't it?
If Maguire's in,
yeah,
I might not watch. That's the sort of thing.
Don't know. It can be in.
No, I think he will be though.
We can't turn this into a football podcast. That'll be another podcast. We'll go another time. But
maybe we'll do a World Cup roundup.
World Cup roundup.
Yeah. Anyway. So we finished last week without really finishing, didn't we? Because I had to shoot off for a session.
Yeah, you fucked it up.
I fucked it up. I booked someone in when I fucking shouldn't have, and it was their fault.
It's not my fault. No. I mean, the first thing in life is don't take responsibility for other people's problems.
Well, I think it's good for other people to take responsibility and empower themselves. But with me,
of course,
it's normally not my fault, and so clients. But the reason I felt it wasn't that it was a particularly short podcast. It was an hour and 15 minutes, but I felt we're just getting into some of the meat on terms of fat loss and maybe a bit of behaviour change. And it just felt like we were scraping the surface there, not service. And we've done behaviour change in the past as a podcast. We will definitely be doing another one in the future. But we were just sort of getting into the real applicable elements for clients wanting to lose fat or if they're struggling. And it felt a little bit of a half-finished thing. So we both probably feel there's a little bit more about muscle building we could talk about, a little bit more about fat loss. and see where the conversation goes from there.
Yeah, I think, you're right. We kind of ended up last week's podcast. If you haven't listened to it, we do go into quite a lot of detail around muscle building predominantly, and we're just getting towards fat loss at the end. And how we started to end the conversation was you talking a little bit about some strategies around fat loss.
Yeah.
And then I was coming at it from the standpoint of see those strategies, understand those strategies, but when we're working with the general population, we're looking at some sort of change of behaviour. And this, through my perspective of where I've struggled in the past, and other coaches that I've mentored have also struggled. They're like, I've got all this knowledge, I've done the courses, but my clients aren't changing. I'm struggling to have these conversations. I'm struggling to maybe connect in a level where we have this relationship that sees not just short-term change, but long-term change. And we all really want for our clients, and it's what our clients want to get to a certain goal.
Yeah.
So it's a conversation we've had a little bit in the past. We'll expand on a little bit today. And as we alluded to last week, it will be a part of the second part of our seminar, won't it? Where I'm going to talk a little bit more about this communication element. And I think good communication is almost the foundation to behaviour change.
Yeah.
We could talk a day about some of the more advanced stuff, but if we can't communicate reasonably well, we can't build a relationship, then it's just going to go nowhere. So it's almost those foundational skills can get lost sometimes, and that's what we can start the podcast there if you want to, and then move down other paths, mate. But I don't know what your view on it is, but that's just we touched on it last week, didn't we? And as you said, expand on it a bit today.
Yeah, it's having those strategies, but also understanding the person, isn't it? Because we need strategies to actually give people. Sometimes people will have the answers themselves once you start to open up the conversation, but also that some strategies that maybe we've either used or maybe that other clients have used that have worked really well for them that you can then pass on as well. So it's not necessarily a strategy you've come up with, but maybe an anecdotal one that a client has and you think, oh, that worked really well for them. I can add that into some answers for some other people or something for them to try. We got to the point, and I'm sure we've all had this, we've had clients where you've just given them fucking information and they haven't applied it. And early in our careers, we can tend to blame them for the fact that, well, I've given you the information, why haven't you done it? And that happens too often for purely information to be the answer, which I think we're all aware of anyway, aren't we? It's not just information, because people understand probably in the main what they need to do, but actually enabling them and them being able to do that and consistently make that change over a period of time isn't just giving them information. Sometimes I've also found, I've talked about this before, we've talked about it before, sometimes people have taken the strategy, used it, and then understood themselves better as they move through it as well, which sometimes works really nicely and is by no means always the case. But sometimes someone just getting some success, building some momentum, and then reflecting on what they've done and what difference had been this time, or what you maybe said as a coach, maybe an analogy that had really struck home, or maybe this time there was just something bigger that had been a bigger motivator, such as a health scare that had really driven them on to want to change. And other times you give people information and it doesn't seem to really strike, or maybe it's not high enough value, and then those times we really need to get underneath the bonnet, so to speak, and understand the person. Not that we're not going to understand the person. I'll throw this back at you in a minute. Sometimes I've had a relationship with a client where you've sort of understood the person at the start and their conversations you have quite early on, and then change happens over a longer period of time. Other times the strategies and sort of the weight loss has happened straight away, and then I've started to learn more about the person further down the line as we develop that relationship. So I think when we go into any new relationship with a client, or it's important that we're open-minded to it could go any sort of way, and it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all.
Yes, mate. I mean, so much stuff. I'm literally jotting down loads of notes as you're talking there, because it's brought up a lot of really good points. So I think fat loss training is a journey, isn't it? And it's our clients are on this journey, and throughout it, hopefully, they're learning a little bit more about themselves. Hopefully, becoming a little bit more self-aware on what they struggle with and what they do really well at, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. Because when you first start out, you don't always know.
No.
So you come up with the word that you use with strategies. Together, you come up with strategies and you apply that, and then you reflect on that and go, right, how is that working for you? Brilliant, you're doing really well, keep it going. Oh, you're struggling with that strategy from what I'm hearing. Do we need to change something? Do we need to tweak something? What are the barriers to you applying the plan, essentially? So And that's just a process, isn't it? Almost
Yeah.
like never ending, really, because we're learning more about the client. We might be learning more about ourselves as coaches, hopefully.
Yeah.
And the client is learning more about themselves. And that's what's really exciting about coaching. Also, as I was listening to you talk there as well about coming up with these strategies, intrinsic motivation came to my mind, and something I've mentioned, I don't know if I've mentioned on the podcast, we've talked about it before, self-determination theory, which is a really nice place to start the behaviour change conversation. Because what we've got here is, to simplify it anyway, is sort of 3 areas that really help a client find their own intrinsic drivers and motivators. And one that came to mind, part of this, was as you were talking a lot about what's worked for other clients, that would be one part of self-determination theory, which is called relatedness, where they can kind of understand and connect and essentially relate to other people's journeys and think, I'm not the only one struggling. Oh, this has worked well for other people. So I think that's one key element which we can expand on. And there's 2 others here as well, which is autonomy. So that is essentially allowing someone to feel like they can make some choices and they can have a sense of control and a sense of decision making. And when someone gets to make decisions for themselves, you're then starting to help them take responsibility because it's their idea. And then together you can kind of work out how you're going to apply that idea. And then the other part to it is competence. Essentially, that we've mentioned self-efficacy, which is over time going, you know what, Dan's given me this strategy. I wasn't that confident at first, but now I've done it for a month. I've shown myself I can do it. I feel more competent. I feel more confident with it. So those 3 elements are kind of a real key part of behaviour change, and in this context, fat loss, but we could be talking about any sort of change, couldn't we, ultimately? What do you think in those areas, mate?
I just want to take something we just said there with competence and confidence. So I was talking to a trainer the other day, and she was talking about wanting to be more confident. And being competent at something leads to confidence. So as you become more competent at that thing, it's like when you first walk into a gym and people don't really know what they're doing, they feel a bit on edge, they're new to the environment, but they're not sure what they're doing, is very different to, say, someone who does have an understanding of what they want to be doing in a gym. They feel competent when they go in to jump onto those kits, and so inevitably they feel more confident to walk into that. And that's one of those things with anything, is that the more competent you are, the more confident you're going to feel. With regards to autonomy, I certainly have found that's a big thing that a lot of clients like. Not every client, but a lot of clients being able to have that conversation with you, because it builds up again their understanding of maybe little changes that they can make. It gives them the opportunity to take the lead, which further down the line is going to give them a much better chance of having a sustainable change, because they understand, because it hasn't just been you dictating, it's been a relationship, it's been an autonomous thing where you can have those discussions together and maybe let the client take the lead, so that next time something crops up, they feel confident because they've done something previously that's worked. They still might want to bounce it off you, but I think that autonomous relationship leads to far greater long-term change, from my own experience, than me just dictating to someone. And for some people, they might not. When you are dictating to someone, sometimes they don't even feel that they can ask as to why. So then they are just really getting the what's. So at some point, if they leave training for whatever reason or go their own direction, they might have known what they did last time, but if they didn't understand the reasoning processes behind that, it hasn't really given them the ability to make good decisions further down the line, or just any decision they want to make based on understanding something. So it's something that I very much aim for now, is an autonomous relationship, and explaining sort of my thought processes, understanding their thought processes as well. But I think that leads to much better change.
Yeah.
Those 3 areas.
Yeah, I mean, I think autonomy is often like a foundational human need, actually. And you see people when they struggle the most in life, they feel like they don't have any control. They feel like they don't have any choice. And once choice gets taken away from someone, you see people mentally drop. So I think it's something we need in life. And we've mentioned before, it can potentially be quite scary as a coach to let the client take some control and take some reins. But the more I understand psychology, the more I understand people, the more I see the value of letting clients explore stuff for themselves and explore their problems, explore solutions. And what's really important for me as a coach is to allow space and time for that, rather than me always trying to push a conversation down a certain path. Because it's amazing when you slow down a little bit and you manage to find a quiet therapeutic space, which can be difficult in the gym. Clients feel more relaxed. They feel like for the first time they can actually think and they can reflect without feeling the pressure or the judgment. And then it's amazing how the brain starts to think about stuff that it wasn't aware of before. And the reason this happens is because we're able to get into the subconscious part of the brain, because we're starting to think a bit deeper, we're starting to reflect, we're giving ourselves, as I said, time and space. It's kind of the coach's responsibility to do their best to try and create that environment so clients can start thinking and reflecting more. As I alluded to last week, or as we both did last week, this becomes more important from a behaviour change when clients are struggling more. At first, if you said a client might just come in, want some quite quick results, really highly motivated, let's get them some results. Brilliant, nothing wrong with that. But we all know through training the general population, some people are going to have just life struggles as well. It's not just around weight loss. And giving someone a little bit of space, a little bit of time, a little bit of peace, and become this active listener, which is very difficult. And I might talk a little bit more about what I mean by active listening. Very difficult. When we do that, it's amazing the opportunity we can give people.
I just want to go back to what you said about judgment there. And this is really important in anything, but I found it a lot with fat loss as well, is that if a client maybe hasn't had a successful week in quotations as part of their fat loss journey, let's say, for whatever reason, it's important that they feel they can come in and tell you that, and they're not going to feel judged in that moment. Because if they feel they're going to be judged, they might not be open and honest with you. If they're not open and honest with you, you can't help them overcome whatever this plateau is. It could be a reason outside, it could be something personal, it could be fact they went out and had a smash up at the weekend. It could be anything, right? That's meant they haven't done it. It might just fallen off the wagon. It's not really the terminology I want to use, but they've just fallen off the routine, let's say. I haven't quite got that straight.
Oh,
it's fucking pissed, isn't it? So if you look at this,
sorry,
so I'm just talking about the coffee machine. I fucked up the
machine.
coffee.
Oh, no.
Watch it on YouTube.
Oh dear.
There we go.
Is that all right?
It's a bit pissed, yeah. There you go.
Could have been a disaster there.
Coffee all over the lappers, as in laptop, not our laps. But it's important. You can only work together to help them overcome whatever that is. I'm right for a second, mate, actually. If they feel they can be open and honest with you. But then once you understand the reasoning, maybe the fact they didn't lose weight, which, fucking don't really matter, does it? But as to why they haven't lost weight, why they feel they've struggled that week, if they feel they can be open and honest, then that allows you to be reflectful with them, having all the information to coach them. If they feel they're going to be judged, so they feel they can't tell you they didn't lose weight this week, or they can't tell you as to why, or that they didn't lose weight, but they sort of go, I don't know, because I hit everything that you said I was going to hit, knowing full well they fucking haven't, and now you're making changes based on inaccurate information. That's going to really hold back potentially their progress. So it's really important that they feel they can come in unjudged and be open and honest about their week, and that allows you then to move forward together. So I've got a client, who's a doctor, and sometimes says the same thing. It's like, if someone's come in, it's like, I need you to be as open and honest with me as possible, so then I can give you all the information and we can work together. If someone's holding something back, then you're not going to be able to help them, but then it's up to you as the coach to create that environment. All right, it's not on them to create that environment. It's on you to create that environment where they feel they can be open and honest and not judged. Yeah,
it's such a good point, mate. I'm glad you sort of bring that up about you highlighted what I said about the judgment side, because I know I was guilty for it when I was younger, wanting clients to follow a plan and almost being frustrated or pissed off that they hadn't. It was their fault.
Yeah.
And as I've got older and I've started to reflect a little bit more on my coaching and how I want to help people a little bit more rather than just surface level, I've realised that connection is really key. And part of that connection is this kind of alliance, sort of therapeutic alliance, that there's trust, that person feels listened to, that person feels supported, and that person feels like I mean, so this kind of these words, which I'll talk about in the seminar, unconditional positive regard, which essentially is saying no matter what, I hold this person in positive regard. I see them as a good person. Doesn't matter. I'm not judging them on their behaviours. It's very easy as a coach, consciously, maybe even subconsciously, to judge someone because they haven't got the steps they said they would get in, or they haven't followed the calories, or they haven't done their exercise, and that can come out subtly in your communication. Your facial expressions, whether you cross your arms, you look a bit closed, you might just look a little bit angry, you might look a bit frustrated, rather than thinking, actually, this person is a good person, I hold them in high positive regard no matter how they behave. And when we can do that, then we've got a really amazing opportunity to have a stronger relationship. Clients then, over time, this is a time thing, feel like they can open up bit by bit. It's not going to happen in one session or 2 sessions. It will take weeks, months, and often years, to be honest with you, where clients really feel in a safe space. And you're absolutely right, Dan, that it's us as trainers, it's our responsibility to try and create that environment. And in counselling, we call that therapeutic frame. So trying to create the right frame, the right environment, the right conditions to try and have the best communication. It obviously as trainers, it isn't the same because we're not in a therapist room. I'm fortunate where at times I do get to spend time in an office with people. It can feel a bit more private. But the conditions, the environment, the room, or even just where you take someone in the gym. Are you next to someone shouting and screaming, or is there a quiet spot? Just giving someone a little bit of time to go, look, at the beginning of the session, there's some space. We don't have to crack straight on with exercise. Yeah, and people feeling like it's a bit predictable. Like when I see James, I know there's going to be that safe space, rather than one week, I don't know what James is going to be like. Is he going to be, if he's not one week, is he going to be calm and collected the other week? Are we going to be here? Are we going to be there? The client comes in thinking, I don't know what to expect. You almost, over time, you can set the clients up to think, right, I know it's going to be a calmer start to the session. There's going to be an opportunity to be able to open up and to reflect. That's almost like level 1. Without that and understanding some of the basic stuff around autonomy, relatedness, and kind of being really competent with something, we can't really move forward. Yet we really want to. We want to do the next thing. We haven't got the foundations in place. It's like you trying to get someone to do something mechanics-wise and they just don't even know the muscles that are working. They just can't even grasp the basics, and you're trying to do something, cuff them up and try and do something really advanced. Get the basics right. And I think in communication, we often skip it.
Yeah, and I was definitely guilty of that in the past, judging people. I think I was pretty good, but probably not as good as I thought I was at hiding that. But it was almost in my brain as they were talking. I was thinking, chatting shit, you should have just stuck to it. I was just thinking that whilst doing my best not to, but I'm sure there were subtle things within my body language giving it away, like my face just going bright red or something like that.
You can tell.
Steam like that. It's like my 11th session of the day, 9 o'clock at night. So, but I'm much better now, even straight away my own thought process of, not being judgmental at all. I know how difficult it is. And I know when I've done my own, sort of, if I'm doing my own fat loss for a bit, think, fucking hell, kick the arse out the weekend there a little bit. I'm going to have to report that or blag it, and you start to see it from the other point of view, don't you? And it's like, oh, actually, do you know what? There's many things that could come up, and that's not even that stressful. That was a personal choice to go out. If you've got kids or stressful jobs and things like that, and things don't happen, and then it's understanding. Obviously, there's different contexts where it'd be different. We're talking about general population here. If you've got someone who's getting on stage, there's a time thing there, isn't it? So it's very different. But for us, quite often with clients, I'm saying, well, they miss a week and they get a bit... Then they judge themselves.
Yes.
And then you have to flip it the other way and go, well, actually, when are we aiming for? Well, we're aiming for my wedding next year. Okay, well, all right, so you went on a lovely weekend. We're not that far away from where you want to be, and we've got 6 months. Don't be so hard on yourself. So sometimes you've got to flip it the other way, and it's them judging themselves way more than you're judging them.
Yeah.
Or maybe they think you're going to judge them or whatever. So again, it's creating that environment where they're not too hard on themselves. There's a balance in there, because I've also met trainers who, not that I'm moving away from judgment here, but have put no pressure. Sorry, guys, my phone. if someone wants to achieve something, at some point there's going to need to be a little bit of a pressure applied to ensure we get things done. But for the vast majority of people, they're far too hard on themselves if 1 week doesn't go to plan, or they have fun one weekend, or you get into that all or nothing mindset. So sometimes it's actually allowing the person or engage with the person to make sure they're not too hard on themselves, and beating themselves up constantly if they're not getting the results as well. Actually, that's as important, if not more important, than us being judgmental, is them not being judgmental about themselves.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic point. One that I 100% agree with is that we need to be aware of people's judgments of themselves. You're absolutely spot on, mate. And we talk about unconditional positive regard. We need to have that for ourselves. Us as coaches, we need to, just because we don't have the perfect day or the perfect week or whatever, if we judge ourselves and all the behaviours we don't quite get aligned or right, you're going to constantly be in this kind of negative state all the time. And that might potentially, for some people, that might start to lower their self-esteem, their motivation, and just how they view themselves based upon not getting the behaviours aligned. So as human beings, we do like to judge others or judge ourselves. It's very unhelpful. Couldn't agree more that we need to have positive regard for ourselves. Our clients need to have positive regard for themselves and hopefully for each other. That's just such a key point. And yes, people can, I suppose, with the behaviour change sort of stuff and with the early relationship stuff, sometimes people can see that as, oh, I'm doing lots of this soft skill stuff and not enough pushing and challenging. And something that I talk about is that the two don't have to be mutually exclusive. We can use these skills, listening skills, communication skills, and definitely still challenge. If anything, it allows us to pick the right moments to challenge because we understand our clients better and we understand ourselves better. Like you now, Dan, have a far greater level of self-awareness than you did 5-6 years ago, so you can be better at reflecting and you can improve your skill set. So challenge is good, and challenging people is useful, just finding the right time, the right moment for that person. Some people, we all need to be communicated with a little bit differently, and the nuances of conversation depends how much you understand the person in front of you. That's a really important point, I think.
Also, one of the things I found as well with people that maybe have come in any goal, and fat loss being one, and had a lot of success early on and then it plateaus, I found then people can be quite hard on themselves. So one of the things I like to do is remind them of how far they've come and how well they've done up to that point. So even if there is a plateau for whatever reason, don't forget the work you've done. Sometimes we can all be guilty, I'm guilty of this, is just always looking forward. And sometimes obviously reflecting on the way we are, but also reflecting on things you've done well and going, all right, so there's been a bit of a plateau for whatever reason, but look at all the, in this context, look at the weight you've lost, look how well you've done for the last 2 or 3 months. Yeah, maybe it's slowed a little bit, but that's fine. Again, don't be too hard on yourself. It's not going to be fucking linear. I wish it was, but it's not always going to be linear. So maybe take some stock. Christmas is coming up, one of those things. And it's like, well, I don't like people to be too hard on themselves over Christmas. There's certain times that come up and sometimes it's nice to, I know you just mentioned this word about awareness, but sometimes I don't think people are reflective enough on how well they've done within their fitness journey within 2 or 3 months, and not get so caught up with what I'm doing next or it's not working now, and go, actually, with the last 6 months, you've absolutely smashed it. Let's discuss that rather than the fact actually the last 2 weeks it's plateaued. And just, is that the camera?
I think so.
Is it the camera or my kettle?
Maybe your kettle, mate.
Where's my kettle kicking off? I feel like it might have been the kettle. Was it the camera?
I think so, yeah.
Camera or the kettle, fuck it, one of them. That reflection, obviously you're talking about there, but I think it can be really helpful with clients if they, if they haven't quite, they come in a bit of a, feel like they're not getting anywhere or they've had a bit of a plateau, and talking to them, I think just really talking about the things, the success they've had recently can be such a great way. And it's worked really well for me with clients who've done really well and plateaued and got a bit down and then thought, I'm not getting anywhere. Just to talk about that really gets them sort of back into a more positive mindset, and not a fake one, because that's what they've achieved,
Yeah. So as we said, a lot of people will potentially judge themselves and maybe get a bit negative and a little bit fused with the things they aren't doing well at.
Yeah.
And us as coaches, we can then go, well, look at all the successes you've had, which is great. I think we have to be quite careful that can potentially come across a little bit patronising if we're not careful with how we do it.
It's got to be real,
it's got to be genuine.
Yeah.
But also, again, going back to the getting information from the clients, if you can get them to come up with a narrative, like, Corey, I can get why you maybe don't feel positive and you feel a bit low because you haven't achieved these things. What has gone well this week? Where have you been successful this week or in the last couple of months? And when they find that for themselves, that's incredibly empowering. Not that it's wrong for us to reflect, and sometimes the client's in just such a negative space, maybe they can't see it. But when they can start to change their perspective and think about things from a different point of view rather than just purely negative and the things they aren't doing, that is very empowering. Us as coaches aren't always great at that because we have, some coaches have these tick boxes, and you can potentially, clients can feel quite guilty if they don't tick all the boxes. And as we keep saying today, it's our responsibility as trainers to basically not attach someone's worth around whether or not they've just done steps or fucking lost weight on a set of scales. I always go to clients, look, I know your goal, if it is weight loss, I go, right, that's a goal of yours, but you're more than just those numbers on the scale. You've got all these other things in your life. What else is going well? And they'll be like, well, I'm loving time with my kids. I've been doing this, I've been doing that. I haven't got my exercise in. Okay, but what else have you done well? Well, actually, I went and started to read a new book or started a new hobby, whatever it could be. Like, these are fantastic things. Like, let's not lose sight of these just because us as trainers, obviously, we're trying to help someone from a health and fitness standpoint. Health is massive. Well-being, human well-being, the more you study it, it's very multifaceted. Yet we, as trainers, sometimes we knuckle it down to these very small tick box exercises, and then we make people feel like they're being judged or their well-being is just based around this. All these other things in their life. And I'm always looking for other things that they are doing well in their life that is going well. They might have learned to cook. They might have learned to make some nice cocktails. Whatever it is, that's brilliant. They've enjoyed that. It's been a great experience for them and their partner. I'm always highlighting, I'm allowing the clients to find it for themselves, and I'm reflecting back, which is a skill that I talk about on the seminar. Reflect that back to a client and go, God, what I've heard there is you've had a really great time with your partner and you've really enjoyed cocktail making together. And like, yeah, I have. That's fantastic. Like, they might not have lost weight, but they've done something really positive for themselves. We don't do it. I don't think we do that much as coaches, and something that I try and do more and more now is look at all that life as a whole.
You pointed at my cocktail cabinet, didn't you?
I did make sure doing cocktails, because I remind me.
I'm amazing at making about 2 cocktails.
Brilliant.
So I've got a whole cabinet.
Gin and tonic is one, isn't it?
Yeah. JD and Coke.
Cocktail, isn't it? They're the teammate, I think.
I agree with all of that. I suppose on the one thing, what would you say, and I suppose you would treat this on an individual basis, because yes, there's so much more to health, definitely, than just weight loss. But if someone really is determined, I want to lose fat, then I suppose in that instance, we have to be a bit more specific and say, okay, we want to lose fat. This week it hasn't gone to plan. Let's just look at some of those reasons, understand what's gone on, and let's see what we can do next week. I don't even like to use the word like where it's gone wrong. It's like, what's gone on this week?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you reckon we could change for next week, maybe to move us more towards fat loss? If the specific goal is fat loss, if it's like you've got a wedding coming up, for instance, they're like, I know I want to lose some weight. Then in that instance where we are a bit more specific, it's I use this with clients a lot. It's not about judging where we're at this moment, and that doesn't mean at the start, because week to week is a new moment, but it's how are we going to move forward from where we're at right now, and what if the goal is fat loss, what changes can we make that you think would move you forward, where the autonomy comes into it, that you think that would work well for you, and get them to think about it and give you some stuff, because there's no point in just. And I've got nothing against checking sheets. I've spoken about checking sheets before. It's not my thing, but I'm not an online coach, first of all. I like to speak more to the person, but it's if I lost my train of thought there. If they haven't been able to stick to what you did this week, that's where I was going, then what changes can we make? Rather than just flogging a dead horse and being like, I've told you your steps, I've told you your calories, this is the 3rd week in a row you haven't done it, fucking do it, right? So basically, I know someone's not going to say it like that, but effectively, that's sort of what they are saying. Rather than say, well, okay, so the way we looked at it this week, we thought about it, it didn't quite work out. What do you reckon these reasons are? And do you think there's maybe something that might work a bit better for you? And then just having those conversations with them and allowing to come up with some stuff. At that point, I might offer something that's worked for me or another client. So rather than telling them what to do, actually offering an experience, which I think sometimes comes across a little bit less patronising and dictatorship. And you say, actually, do you know what? One of my clients found this worked really well for them. Might be worth giving that a go. So you're not telling them what to do, but you're offering them maybe some more options based on your experience as the more experienced person within this area here. But again, it doesn't come from a place of judgment. It comes from a place of understanding what we were trying to do this week. Did we get it done? And if not, can we make any changes? Sometimes someone comes after 3 or 4 weeks and says, I'm not that fast about fat loss, actually. I thought I was, but actually I'm just really enjoying training. I'm really enjoying the fact I'm sleeping better. I'm really enjoying the fact I've got more energy. And actually I'm really happy with where I'm at the moment. But sometimes that realisation comes up. So I think it's always important to check in with people as well. Goals change. Reasoning processes change. So I think, it's important to check in with people. It's not like you're going to say to each week, you still want to do fat loss, but it's just re-engaging with people around what their goals are and what their thought processes are. What do you think about that, mate, in the more specific context of fat loss?
Well, I think there's a question you were asking earlier on. I think you were talking a lot about, because I was mentioning about the holistic side, and you were like,
that was it.
Stay on track with the weight
if we
loss.
Say specific.
So you can do both.
Yeah.
I think definitely if there's a specific goal, don't lose sight of that, but then don't let people's
be all consuming.
All consuming as well, because when it does and they don't hit a weight week, they
feels
feel
like a fail, doesn't it?
Fail. You're like, well, you've got all these other things in your life. It's let's look at life as a whole. Let's not miss the forest for the trees sometimes of life. I mean, so you also talk about change. Yeah, goals change because values change.
Yeah,
and as trainers, we can be quite assuming that people want to lose weight or keep losing weight. And we like to assume, we don't realise it, but we can push a conversation forward, or we push someone towards a set of goals by assuming we know what they want, or we assume we know what's best for them. We don't have a fucking clue what's best for them. We're just here to guide and support. It's almost a little bit narcissistic to think, I have all the answers, I am this person, I will tell you how to start living your life. I'm this life coach or whatever. God. And we need to really, this is where understanding comes into it every time, and listening comes into it again. So if people are talking about other things, maybe they've talked about weight loss first of all and they've achieved a little bit, and maybe they don't want to keep going further. Maybe they're happy with where they are. Our PT judgment lens from our little bubble we're in thinks, oh, this is lean, or this means someone's lost weight. That's our fucking bias based upon our view of what we view. What you and me view as lean was probably totally different to what someone else views as lean, yet we're trying to put them into our views of lean. They're really happy with that. That's goes a couple of pounds. That's all they want to do. They don't want to be fucking shredded. Great. Why am I assuming that they want to lose more and more weight, pushing them down a path they don't necessarily want to go down? Sometimes they do, and sometimes we need to encourage and support. So we can't lose sight of the person in front of us. It's quite easy to look at a goal or look at the problem and forget about the person. We've mentioned this in rehab before, where people are very focused on the knee or the back or the shoulder, whatever issue that they've got or potential pathology, but lose sight of the person. And this is really what personal training is about, and person-centered coaching is developing that relationship and going, right, this person has changed, their values have changed, and last year was weight loss, but now it's more about sustaining, it's more about maintaining things. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm going to go on a bit of a rant.
Fucking hell. Strap in.
It's been a while, isn't it? It's not actually a proper rant. It's going to take long. Good. It's not going to take me long, mate. I'm fucking get off my chest and we'll fucking move on.
Got to work out this.
Trainers on social media, which everyone knows is my bugbear, when whatever the trainer's goal is in that moment, becoming what everyone's goal should be. So this trend. So 1 minute, someone can be wanting to get as strong as possible. That should be everyone's goal. This is my goal. This is everyone's goal. Then someone wanted to do on a photo shoot, and then all of a sudden it's everyone's goal. And then everyone wanted to be functionally fit. Ollie Marchand's doing functional fit stuff in that moment. Everyone then wants to do that, and that should be everyone's goal. And then I saw something from someone the other day who I met on the course. Good guy, really nice guy, but he'd gone through this, and then he'd come to, oh no, now I'm backing off my goals. Actually, I just want to enjoy it. And that's what everyone should be doing. So it's almost like every time, whatever that person's current bias was, that's what everyone should be doing in that moment. Rather than actually understanding what the person wants and what is best for them moving towards their goal. And understanding that all these things are pretty cool individually, And at any one time, anyone can want to do them, but it shouldn't be the fact that at the moment this is my main goal, so because it's around my bias at the minute, everyone should be doing that. And we should have an understanding that we're going to go through biases as well. We're going to have moments where we go through enjoying different forms of training, deciding I want to be lean and then going through, actually it doesn't matter if I'm that lean. We're going through these things ourselves, but we shouldn't then, whatever our current thought is, mean that that is what everyone else should be doing because that's our current thought. Does that make sense?
It does. So yeah, I suppose what I've seen as well is trainers changing their own training for a host of reasons, and then their clients train how they train, which I've seen a lot in the industry throughout the years.
I was guilty for it earlier in my career.
Yeah, and I suppose we all have biases and we're all going through our own journey. And I think if we definitely learn from other sources to gather more wisdom and more knowledge, and then maybe we can tweak our clients' train. Doesn't mean they have to train the same all the time, but it's an evolution rather than bouncing from A to B. There's a subtle difference.
It's not fad following.
It's not like I'm over there one direction.
Yeah.
Oh, they're saying that's gospel. I'm over there, which I was definitely guilty of when I was younger.
So was I.
I've heard that information. That's gospel now.
Yeah.
Rather than going, okay, I'm going to entertain all these different perspectives. So I evolve. Now, I've learned a lot more about mechanics for you guys, so I've used that information that's relatable to me personally, and I've applied it to the clients it relates to, but quite selectively, which I'm able to do now because I've been in this industry for quite a while. When I was younger, I probably would have taken it all on board and applied it to everyone because
it's strapped up in the leg press.
Yeah, because it's become my bias.
Yeah.
Rather than now, I've got my biases for how I want to train and my goals, but lots of my clients, they're so different to me. They don't want to be strapped up in the leg press and go. That just doesn't interest them at all. So I really try and think what that person needs. And yeah, we should evolve and grow, but we shouldn't just be bouncing about. You're thinking, well, what are we doing? And sometimes I might see that in slightly younger coaches, maybe people who haven't developed as much life experience. It's something that I was guilty of when I was younger, so hands up, but I'm a lot older now. But we always need to stay quite reflective on that. And we all have our little bubbles, don't we? We have these little conversations, and then that starts to influence us. So beware of your influences, and we've mentioned this before on podcasts, whether it's social media, whether it's other trainers in your gym, and ask yourself, okay, I can see all those different perspectives. Please entertain them. Don't shut off to them. Take on what you need to take on, but then don't take it all on where you try and be like somebody else. And it's a difficult thing to do, to be fair, because I've seen PTs on one side of it shut off and be like, well, you're all fucking wrong. I'm sticking to the way that I've been doing it for the last decade. Or other PTs going and just jumping about and doing it because another PT's doing it. How are you all doing the same stuff?
Yeah.
If you're all different people with apparently different philosophies, I don't get how it should all look exactly the same.
That can be authentic.
Well, because that means we've all got in such a bubble,
yeah,
and we're all singing off the same song sheet. We're just bouncing. We're just kind of becoming an echo chamber for each other, rather than on this podcast, you and me, we have slightly different perspectives because we're different people.
I'm right.
And you're wrong, and I'm right. Yeah, but that's important, isn't it? Having these conversations, and when we go to see my mate Sam next week, he'll have a different perspective on training than we do because he's come from a different background. That's great for our growth, and everyone grows through that. So yeah, I could go on a fucking rant about it as well, mate.
My point being, those 4 things I just mentioned are all good.
Yeah.
In the right context for the right person, strength training is awesome. Photo shoots are awesome. The Ollie March and sort of more functional, I put in quotations, but the all over sort of fitness, bit of CV circuits, that's awesome. The just wanting to train and keep genuinely fit and healthy is awesome. My point wasn't that, and an individual thing, that any of them are bad and we should entertain all of those, and we've probably all got clients that all fancy a bit of all of that. It's not going, this is my current bias, said put a D on that, and because this is my current thing, everyone else should be doing this, and then 6 months later, this is my new current thing and everyone should be doing this. It's, as James said, it's taking bits from all of that and creating your own recipe. And that's what I've tried to do as a coach as I've got older and more reflective. I've done this, by the way, earlier in my career. I've definitely gone all in and this is the only way. Everyone squatted, benched and fucking deadlifted. But now I feel like I can take bits and bobs from all of this that I think work best with my philosophy and how I think coaching works best for me and my clients, and I can take bits and pieces and then put your own recipe together rather than just going and copying someone else's recipe. Do you know what I mean?
It's critical thinking again, isn't
Yeah.
it? Though we mentioned critical thinking again as well. It's always good to repeat ourselves. We like to do that a lot anyway.
That's what I do.
That's what we do. It's how we.
I ran out of
keep
information
talking, so
30 podcasts ago.
just keep fucking, if I repeat myself 100 times, it makes me feel good. You just keep repeating yourself, James.
And you get more certain every time you say it.
So maybe I need to go and read more books, mate. But critical thinking, taking some information, be critical with it. Don't shut off to it. It's the quote, isn't it? It's the mark of an educated mind. Entertain a thought, and you don't have to accept it essentially. But at least entertain it. Have an open mindset to go. Dan might have something useful to offer me. Not much, but there might be something fucking useful. You can tell me where the best pubs are.
Trying to steal my recipes.
And the best cocktails. So I'll take it on board, mate. Anything else?
Not nonsense. But it is. So that was. Be your own person, be your own coach. And that's, if you bring your personality in with things that you've learned, and maybe you have gone through some fads and you thought, that bit's really good though, I like that, and maybe that bit of it I don't like, and then creating your own thing, it's going to be more authentic because you're going to have your own way around doing things. We've all got our own biases, and that's fine, but it's just understanding what they are and making sure they don't become your blind spot, I suppose. Being aware that it's your biases towards this, which might mean that certain, as you've mentioned loads of times, James, it might mean certain clients aren't right for you and you're not right for them because there's maybe a way they want to train, and that's maybe not how you want to train, and it's up to you. In that point, it's like, well, do I just train them how they want to train so I can get this client? Well, sometimes early in your career, maybe you need to. Maybe it's a good experience for you, but also maybe you need the work. But maybe slightly later on, if you've got a settled client base and you think, this is really the way I like to go about things now. This is the sort of coach that I am. And yes, I'm adaptable, but I'm not going to throw my whole philosophy out because you just want to train like this and I actually don't see it that way. Maybe that's something later in your career that you're a bit more selective, but also not throwing the baby out of the bathwater with that one. If you're building a business, it's going to take a lot longer to build if you're selective with everyone straight away. So there's an understanding of a needs. And I remember one client in particular, he might have been at TWPT at the time, mate. She was like, she basically just wanted it to be like a fucking boot camp. Do you might remember?
Yeah, I think I do, yeah.
And I just literally, it was like, she didn't want to fucking stop for the hour.
Yeah.
And so I'll be honest, I'm making shit up because an hour without stopping, well, I'm not making it up, but I'm just attaching stuff in anywhere I can. Because to not stop for a fucking hour is... it's fucking hard. And I mean, she was hardcore, she could fucking do it, but I didn't enjoy the session because it was nothing the way I like to train and the way that I like to go about things. It was nothing like that. So now, if someone wanted to train like that, I'd be like, that's cool, it's just I'm not the coach for you. Maybe we'll look at some small personal training, or there's one of the coaches at TWPT that's a bit like that and loves that sort of stuff, where it's like, maybe you'd be better training with them. I also had a client once when I worked at Nuffield Health, which was sport at the time, and they fucking promised, right? They're like, have a free personal training sessions. We guarantee you'll burn 500 calories. Right? That was the fucking
500
That was the
calories?
fucking promotion.
Bloody hell.
And so most people come in and say they're a PT at that 500 calories. And then I had one, she rocked up and she had a watch on. She was like, 500 calories. I was like, I was only about 20. And obviously it wasn't my promise. It was the gym's promise.
150 later. Been an hour, mate.
Do you know, we did actually get there.
Did you?
But it was obviously it was just
keep doing the burpees.
Yeah, it was just exactly that. Yeah.
What you want?
Burpees. It was just a fucking obviously CV circuit smash up. And again, I didn't enjoy that. The client, I think, was just testing it, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, and don't throw. Once you sort of get how you like to coach people on something that you found works, and that doesn't mean that you're not going to be adaptable. It doesn't mean you've got to fucking, this is the way we do it. It just means your overarching philosophy is probably going to be there, and then you're going to change it and adapt that from person to person. Not too dissimilar to like a football team, where managers have their philosophy, but it doesn't mean they're not going to adapt from opposition to opponent to opponent. So it's like you've got that overarching thing, but yeah.
Good metaphor there, mate.
I thought so. I thought bring some football in.
Yeah, brings football in. But no, it's good. And I again totally agree, man. I'm agreeing with a lot of stuff today. But
knocking it out of the park today, mate.
Yeah, mate. No, some good stuff, mate. It's like you've had some good mentoring. But it's great to hear, because you're right. We need to have this confidence and philosophy in ourselves as a coach, but be adaptable. I'm not going to just repeat what you've just said, but I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
But I mentioned earlier on today about active listening. What do you think I mean by active listening, mate? When I say that,
I always think
what's your...
I like to think of active listening as actually listening.
Yeah.
Because, and we're all fucking guilty of this. You're looking at someone, they're talking at you.
It's like, when do I get to speak?
First of all, because which is why the way I try and get out of this within a podcast, because I'm going to be bored of what you're saying, mate. Yeah. But mainly because I want to listen to you, to engage in conversation. That's why I have my notebook. So that if something really pops into my mind, because you know what it's like. I keep looking at the camera, sorry, it's a fucking amateur hour, that, isn't it? The thing that stops you mainly is you think you got a good point and you don't want to forget it, but they're still talking. So you sort of think, I hope you finish soon because I've got a fucking nugget here. Yeah. So the way I go about this on the podcast is when and I know you do it as well, is write notes. Just a couple of words that means you got your point here, but you can still listen. So I think of active listening as actually listening. We are truly trying to listen and understand what the person's trying to say and not drift off into thinking about what you're having for dinner tonight or just trying to think as soon as this person stops, I'm going to start talking. Have I got that pretty much right there?
Yes, mate. So it's a deeper level of listening, isn't it? One that you can't sustain all the time.
No.
Do you know, it's very hard work. And I suppose with all these skills, there's layers to the skills, isn't there? So active listening, yes, you're trying to pick up what someone is saying, maybe what's going on beneath the words. Someone might go, yeah, I'm good, mate. That person's saying the words, but they're not feeling like that. So your active listening will allow you to hopefully pick some of that stuff up. It will allow the person to feel like you're really being fully attentive, really. You're really in it with them. You're not being distracted. You're fully engaged. You're making eye contact. You're nodding. You're looking like you want to be there. You're not, and it's hard in the gym sometimes, isn't it? Because there's lots of distractions in the gym, so you just try and stay.
Well, people normally at Halo, if you've got the boxing going on,
it's hard.
You know those big Olympic platforms you've got. You're trying to listen and engage, but it's like it's very hard. It's quite distracting.
Well, I mentioned in today's podcast, like I'm putting myself in the shoes of trainers. Like, also, well and good, James. We've got to be pragmatic with it as well, but you're trying your best to be as engaged. And also, what you're alluding to there, Dan, as well, which we can all be guilty of, is really waiting for your turn to talk. And something that I'm learning to do more and more, especially in my counselling course, is ask myself, why do I want to talk so much? Is it more about me being able to express my opinion and express myself, or is it to offer value? Maybe a bit of both, but sometimes when I allow a little bit more space, and maybe I say a little bit less, which is difficult for me because I've always got a lot to say.
Yeah, you fucking have, mate.
Fucking hell, don't shut up. But when I do that, and when I am able to be more disciplined with it, like I said earlier, it really, not always, but sometimes it allows the client to get to a place they wouldn't have got to because before they jumped in, I had the answer or had something I wanted to say. Maybe just allowing them to explore a little bit, maybe even just as they're thinking, it's a little bit of silence for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever, just gives them a little bit of added space and suddenly they open up more without me even asking a question. So active listening is something I'll be talking in more detail about on our workshop, but it's a real skill. And we talk a lot about communicating and getting the right words across and using the right coaching cues. And we might say, yes, you need to listen. And then we kind of skim over it. But actual listening skills is something you have to actually work at every day and put the effort into. And I was really shit at it for a long time. Now I'm just a little bit less shit at it. But I'm always catching myself going, yeah, James, you thought you were listening well, but you missed out on a lot. It's almost so much information to get from someone when you're able to tune your brain to listening a little bit better. I remember on our last workshop we did some role plays, don't we? And we got the trainers to sort
of smashed out of the park.
Do that. So you smashed out the role plays out of the park. So if you come along, you'll watch me and Dan do some great role plays. It would be like watching an episode of EastEnders. They'd be absolutely brilliant.
You all right, mate? Yeah, good.
So we do some good role plays and some shit ones, and then we get the guys on the seminar to go away and practice some stuff. And me and Dan will sort of break out and we'll sort of listen to the guys practice their role play with each other. And often what the skill that I'm trying to help the PTs with is trying to pick up more information than what they initially do. They're too busy in their own head to be thinking about what we've got to talk about today, where we've got to go, rather than being fully in the moment, fully present. And once you are, and you just, the exercise can wait, you're there in the moment of the conversation. If you're too busy thinking about setting up the hack squat, you're thinking about setting hack squat and you're just, yeah, cool, you good today? Yeah, nice, mate. Yeah, watch the football, brilliant. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but you can't call that active listening. That's quick conversation. I'm setting up the leg press and hack squat. Let's not pretend it's anything what it was. Today's podcast is about what happens if Betty needs a bit more time and I'm too busy rushing to set up the kit or not paying attention to her. How much does she get an opportunity to really talk openly with me and discuss some of her challenges? And the definition of insanity, same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And as trainers, we're like, why aren't they changing? Why aren't they changing? Because you're not changing as a coach. You're doing the same shit, talking the same way, communicating the same way, expecting something to change, and it doesn't work like that.
80-20 rule with that one. It's like 80% of the time, 20% of your tools will work. So what we're basically saying there is the majority of the time you might find 2 or 3 ways you have of working work, but then there's 20% where it doesn't work, and then you've got the other 80% of your tools to go, right, okay, maybe the few of the normal ways, in quotations, I would go about this aren't working. What else have I got in my toolbox to be able to help someone move through that? And that's important for us to engage with and think about. And especially that's why those clients that maybe don't just listen to what you say, they're the ones that you really learn more from. That's where you really gain experience, because you've had to think more, you've had to engage in it more. I think about those outside of their sessions as well. And what could I go about? Those are the ones I like to go in a bit more, maybe plans, maybe not the right, but I'll know next week, there's a couple of things I might want to tweak, I might want to open a conversation up about. They might come in not in the mood to do it, but I might have a couple of conversations. I think at some point in the next few weeks, I'd like to open up these conversations a little bit. And when the right opportunity presents itself, I know these are the conversations I want to have. But you have to reflect outside of your sessions about that. And if I've reflected, then I'll just make a note on their program. Just so I open it up next time. I think, if today's the right day, I'm going to pick at that little thread a little bit. And it's just understanding that 20% of the time that it doesn't work, that's where you're going to really learn and really work with those people. Because if 100% of the time your one way works, it's not going to work 100% of the time, but let's say it did, you would never learn another way. There's nothing to learn, is there? It's because it's working all the time. And actually then when a challenge does come up, you're not going to have many tools to be able to overcome that. So it is, if you think about the last one was a bit more, the podcast, so it was a little bit more technical. This one's been more about understanding the person, really.
This has been more about soft skills, hasn't it?
Yeah, how are we actually going to communicate these ideas? Not come across patronising, not come across like a dictator, but how are we going to actually now get this information and get the client to be able to apply it, and what's that going to look like from person to person? And that's going to be super important. I've said this before, and I know you have, James. Everyone I know will meet people like this. You'll get that trainer that's brilliant company, that has loads of clients, and you'll get that trainer that's scienced up to the fucking eyeballs with no clients. And that is simply relationship building and being able to communicate with people and people enjoying your company. One of my friends wants to, he's going to start training down at the studio, and it was like, that's actually the first thing he said to me. He said, whose company would I enjoy? Like, yes, he's got his fitness goals, but I want to come down, I want to look forward to my session. I want to enjoy the company of the person I'm training with. I like to think that the trainers there have all got the knowledge on how to lose a bit of fat and build a bit of muscle, but who will I enjoy training with? And I think that says a lot, doesn't it? What I want to enjoy this. I don't want it to be like, fucking hell, yeah, I'm getting the results, but fuck me, here we go. You don't want it to be like that for most people. So it's, I thought that was really telling, actually. So people from outside the industry are thinking like that as well. Different if you're getting on stage, because that's a different sort of relationship, isn't it? But even then, not that I am, but I think I'd like to enjoy a good relationship with the person that I'm working with, and I think we can communicate well.
It's a great place to be with a client where you can have this bond, this connection, and often sometimes some sort of friendship as well.
Yeah.
And you can have fun and then both enjoy the session, but also it doesn't just become all about that, and you can have serious conversations as well. If you can get the both, which is kind of what I'm hearing from you there, that's a really great place to be as a coach.
Right?
I think, I've got the knowledge, my client knows that I've got the knowledge, and I'm here to help them and support them in a professional standpoint, but we can still have a good laugh, we enjoy each other's company, and we can relate to each other as well. That's a great place to be. It's quite easy to jump into too much of the professional camp where people are like, I get it, but it's a bit too rigid.
Bit standoffish,
maybe,
a bit cold,
or so much in the matey group. Now, again, it does have to reading the person. Some people might want a little bit more of the professional, slightly more distant side of it, and some people might really want to connect. I mean, we all want to connect in some shape or form. So it's reading that person. Bring it back to a word that you used earlier, Dan, there was opportunity, and that's reading the person on that day, isn't it? Thinking about behaviour change today, some days isn't the day to be talking about it. We can all relate to it. We think the client's having a shit time. It is just about listening. And as I'm listening to the client, I'm not necessarily thinking about this is what I'm trying to get them to change at all. I'm just more thinking about actually just being supportive.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for just being a listener. And that's it. Like just a listener and maybe some reflections and some empathic reflections, which I won't go into today. I might talk about that in a future podcast. I'll definitely talk about that on the seminar so people feel like you understood what's going on with them emotionally. But I'll park that rabbit hole. But there's a lot to be said for that, mate.
Yeah, there is. I think great coaches have an ability to go both ways, and they have an understanding of when to go which way. Because if you're not able to, maybe with general population clients and maybe even professional athletes and things, but if you're not able to switch that needle based on what that person wants at the time, if you can go both ways, then you're going to be able to connect with more people across the board, right? And then when you start to be able to understand situations, not only different ways with different clients, but maybe different ways with the same client based on, maybe you should have someone that you're just training on a regular basis, suddenly go, weddings in 12 weeks. And you go, right, that's cool. They've been a client for 2-3 years. You get on well. You have good sessions, but all of a sudden they go, goal's just gone up a notch. Then you can flick and go, right, let's do this then. We can do that. And other people that maybe had a big goal at the start and then actually just enjoy training and it shifts into more of an ongoing relationship. And so if you're someone that can go the really professional route, but also can bring it back and make it more of a relationship in terms of maybe a slightly less detached thing, still training and working hard and getting stuff from it, not just mates as you said, but if you can move both ways with that and then understand when the client actually wants you to go either way, then you're going to be a really good general population coach. Maybe if your character's more one way or the other, that's fine, but then you're just going to attract clients that want one or the other rather than maybe a spectrum of both. So it's not like you have to be that if your character goes one way or the other, but just an understanding of maybe you work with a certain type of person better than another type of person, and being open and honest and reflective with yourself that actually, do you know what, I work better with the slightly matier, good fun sessions, or maybe, do you know what, actually I prefer that slightly more professional, a bit more detached client-based thing. And that's fine. Be open and honest with yourself. Maybe that's the clients you want to be having.
Yeah, it's that alignment, isn't it, as a coach? Going align it with your character and trying to align it with where you want to go in your career. And that's really vital. Oh, mate, I was going to go and say something. I've totally forgotten what my...
Why you're thinking?
Oh, emotions.
Got it? Hit that first.
Yeah, so because clients will come in different states. Some people are just generally a bit more neutral.
Yeah.
No matter what's going on in life, you see them, they're just generally not... They're not as open with how they're feeling emotionally. Will have emotions. Some clients, it's like they wear the heart on their sleeve. If they're having a bad day, you know about it, and they're having a good day, you know about it.
We know them.
We know those types of people.
Yeah.
And again, we need to be able to sort of pay attention to that. Be very emotionally aware about what state they're in, but also what emotions that will trigger in us. And I kind of alluded to this last week when I was talking a lot about when clients start to struggle, they can act, some of them, not all of them, but some of them might act a little bit emotionally, which might mean they're quite irrational, they might be quite childlike. That can sometimes trigger, it will trigger emotions in us. So emotional awareness as a coach is quite important. I'm getting a bit pissed off now, they're making me feel a certain way. Am I able to acknowledge that and not let that affect my communication and give the client what I feel, because they don't often know what they need from me. Do I feel that they need? As I alluded to a second ago, is that more just to listen because they've just got to get it off their chest and they've got to have a big ram? Is it more they need a bit of coaching today? They actually do need someone to kind of coach them through things and give them some support and some advice. Got to try and read the state of that person. Sometimes they might start highly emotional because things aren't going right or they haven't achieved what they wanted to, or there's a struggle in life. And maybe as the session goes on, they've managed to open up, they've managed to do a bit of exercise. I know you've mentioned before wanting someone to walk out in a better state. I don't think that always happens, but often it can. and this is always fine tuning. And you mentioned reflection, Dan. It's reflecting and going, next time I was in that situation, next time I'm going to be in that situation with a client, how could I improve on that? What did I do wrong? You know what? They're quite emotional. I stood right next to a boxing ring. Stupid. Something small as that, or I didn't quite listen as much. I didn't reflect as much. I was rushing. I felt a bit stressed. So I started to kind of panic and push the conversation down a certain path. If I don't reflect, I don't improve for the next time. Very hard when you're dealing with people's emotions, but if you're dealing with human beings, inevitably you're going to deal with emotions. If you have fuck all emotional awareness yourself, you're going to be pretty poor at dealing with other people's emotional awareness. Emotional awareness and emotional intelligence, like self-awareness, is something that we hopefully try and develop over time, but it takes practice, it takes skill. Personally, again, hands up, totally shite at it when I was younger. Now just a little bit more emotionally aware, but it's still something that I'm trying to develop on, because I see it as a very important part of developing relationships.
Yeah, no, agree with everything you just said there, mate. Yeah, just to pick up on, I like people to leave in a better mood. Now that might only be acute. I'm not saying I've just solved their problems, because I probably haven't, definitely haven't. But yeah, it's one of those things, because people don't always remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel, or they remember how the session made them feel. And so if you leave after that and you're like, do you know what, I enjoyed the session, again, a big one today, I was listened to, and maybe in the right time, in the right context, try and lighten the mood. Again, it's going to be contextually dependent. Then when they leave, they at least feel in a better mood, even just if it's acute, because like I say, depending on what the issue is, you're not fucking solving them. So yeah. Well, I thought that was good actually, mate.
I want to sort of just summarise, because I know we're getting to the end now. Today's basically been around listening actually, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a sort of a question I would ask anyone listening is, how do you feel when you've been really listened to? So really listened to. So you've been able to fully express to a friend, family member, a coach, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, what's going on. If you've ever experienced that, and I have, whether it's been in therapy or with my own mentors and coaches or with friends, I've always felt, we all feel a lot better. And when you've been on the other side of it, let's not underestimate the power of just being a very good listener, which sometimes means shutting the fuck up, parking your judgments, being fully engaged and fully present. Think how that feels. Remember how that feels to be the person who's been listened to. And if you bring that into your session, straight away, you're adding 10-20% onto the coaching experience, in my opinion. And I think that's actually where today's podcast has gone. And that's just a little reflection for the end there as well.
Yeah. So across the two, hopefully there you got the more technical shit on the first one and the more person-centered shit on this one. I know you had a note about programming. It'd be quite cool to maybe go into some programming further down the line.
I think it'll come up in conversation. Maybe we'll start future podcasts talking about how your training is going and your own programming that you're doing.
Yeah, because I have
share my own programming as well.
Because I was talking to a trainer that I'm tutoring the other day, and we were talking about programming and things like order of exercise, and then looking at volume and intensity, frequency and things. I think order of exercise is something that I've got probably a little bit of a bias, because it works well for me, and in terms of how I think about things, and I'm right. So,
but you realise it's a bias and it works well for you.
Yeah, there's a bias, but I think it'd be quite cool to go into it in terms of explaining the reasoning process behind it and programming, because programming's a funny one, isn't it? It's difficult. It's difficult to teach programming. It's almost like programming is your experience and understanding of exercise, and then putting it down. It's good. It's different from different people. Different people, like different sets. We were speaking about during the week when my program has gone from sort of 8 to 12, 3 working sets, let's say, to more of a top set and then a back off set, something like that, maybe just to feed a set in. So my training's changed, and it's interesting, and the order of exercises as well. When do you put something where you're going to go all in like a hack squat versus something like a quad extension? And I think that'd be quite an interesting podcast. I think it'd be more. It wouldn't just be purely a programming one, because there'd be many things to talk around about that. But I think that might be quite cool.
Well, I think it would come into conversation because you're obviously on this kind of physique journey at the moment, and I enjoy that style of training as well at the moment. But next week we've got an exciting podcast coming up, haven't we?
Yeah, going up to London.
Up to London. London, baby.
London town.
London town. So we'll go up and interview a friend of mine, which will be, as alluded to last week, I think, kind of a really, hopefully quite a nice sort of personal, in-depth conversation.
Taking a videographer.
We'll be talking, all sorts of kind of more, some sort of deeper conversation as well, which if you enjoy those types of things, stay tuned for next week's podcast, because that will be coming out. Well, actually come out maybe a day or two later, I suppose.
Yeah, so the podcast next week will come out on Saturday, because we're not going up to London until, we're going up Friday afternoon. So rather than we normally do this on Thursday, and obviously it comes out Friday, so next week we'll be going to do it Friday afternoon, and we'll put it out Sunday. And then fairly soon we'll put these on YouTube as well, won't we?
Yeah,
now,
if you want to have a little bit of a view,
see what we're doing.
Yeah,
See us fuck it up. Right, guys. I hope that was helpful. All of our stuff is up now on our link trees, either mine, James's, or PT Education itself. In terms of if you want to register your interest in future seminars coming up next year, which, as we've alluded to, will be part mechanics in terms of exercise mechanics, and then part communication, psychology, basically a lot of the stuff we were talking about today, really, in terms of how we build relationship with clients as well. So if that's something that might be of interest to you coming up in 2023, jump on now to our link tree and register your interest. But we will catch you guys next week.